Among the Anunnaki, one name could crown a city or drown it. Enlil, Lord of the Wind, Keeper of Fate, the voice that turned weather into law. If you watched our first Anunnaki episode, you know the council. Tonight we meet the power without apology, enforcer of heaven. But if you don't mind supporting my passion and keep driving more stories, please hit that like button and show your support. Now, on to the good stuff. Before kings wore crowns, they made pilgrimages, not to their own capitals, but to a sacred high place in the marshland heart, Nippur. There, on a raised mound of mud brick and memory, stood Ekur, House Mountain, the temple of Enlil. The Sumerians said kingship descends from heaven, and though dynasties moved from Eridu to Uruk to something steadier anchored power, Enlil's favor. A ruler could build walls and dig canals, but without the breath of this god, the legal utterance that fixes destinies, his years would not stand. Enlil's name carries the weather itself. Enlil, Lord of the Lil, the wind. Not a breeze that caresses cheeks, but the living air that fills sails, drives storms, clears the sky for harvest, and when offended, tears roofs from houses. In a pantheon crowded with patrons, Enlil is not a craft or city god. He is order given a voice. Don't worry, this gets weirder. Lineage threads him to first principles. In most Sumerian lists, he is born of An, sky, Anki, earth, a child of the original split, the space between heaven and ground where weather is made. His consort is Ninlil, Lady of the Wind, and through her he fathers the moon god Nanna, the champion Ninurta, and others whose names move calendars and war. His emblems are not gentle. The horn crown of rank, the tablets of destiny, those clay licenses that legitimate authority, and the roaring wind itself. In art, he's more abstract than Nanna or Enki. Artists carve his might into temples, rituals, and the way the year is named, rather than into the intimacy of a single portrait. To grasp Enlil, look at a Sumerian year name. Year Enlil favored such and such king. Year the canal of so-and-so was dug. Year the wall held. A year was not a number, it was a verdict. The verdict comes from Ekur. And then there are the tablets of destiny. In early tradition, they belong to Enlil, documents that make decrees stick. When the monstrous bird Anzu steals them as Enlil bathes, the world goes slack, commands lose grip, ranks blur. Only when Ninurta hunts Anzu through the cliffs and wins them back can order tighten again. This is Enlil's theology in story form. Without legitimation, power unravels. Down in the fields, that logic becomes weather. Scribes speak of Enlil's storms, but also of Enlil's clearings. Winds that dry the bricks, harden the roads, lift the boats. The same breath that topples walls also names the harvest. Now, on to the good parts. For a god of law, Enlil's own hymns do not spare him. In the tale, Enlil and Ninlil, the young Ninlil, already a novice of Nippur, goes to bathe in a canal. Enlil sees her, desires her, and in some copies coaxes, in others forces a union. The city does not look away. Nippur's elders and gods judge Enlil. Even the Lord of Command must bow to decree. The sentence is banishment. Enlil is driven beyond the city limits and ultimately down toward the underworld. Kursi Merkala, a ritual expulsion that says law binds even its speaker. Ninlil follows. From here the story turns strange and legalistic at once. To keep their first child, Nanna seen, who later becomes the moon, from being condemned to the dark along with his father, Enlil engineers a substitution. At the thresholds of the netherworld, Enlil meets Ninlil in disguise, first as a gatekeeper, then as a river warden, then as another underworld sentinel. The exact titles vary by tablet. Each time, Ninlil conceives a child who is destined to dwell below. Different recensions name them differently, but you'll often see Meslamtea Nergal, a lord of the underworld's dread, Ninazu, an underworld healing deity, Enuji, a subterranean inspector's overseer. These births create lawful substitutes for the netherworld so that the first son, Nanna, is free to rise and take his place in the heavens. In other words, a verdict stands. Enlil is punished, the underworld receives its due, and yet cosmic order is preserved. The moon is not lost to darkness. That's why the myth feels both morally uneasy and meticulously legal. It admits abuse of power, imposes a sentence, and then uses procedure, substitution through named offspring, to stitch the realms back together. One family now spans the sky, Nanna, the earth's order, through Enlil's Ninlil, and the netherworld, their underworld sons. The Sumerian imagination turned scandal into a cosmic constitution. You have heard the deluge by many names: Atrahasis, Utnapishtim, Noah. In the Mesopotamian thread, it begins with Enlil. Humans multiply. Their noise rises like static, a ceaseless clatter of cities, hammers, animals, drums. Enlil cannot sleep. First come plagues and droughts, warnings, checks. But the needle keeps jittering into the red. At last the council is sworn to secrecy. A flood, Enlil decrees. No boat, no warning. Let the world rest. Yet oaths, like doors, have a hinge. Ea Enki finds it. He will not betray the council face to face, but he speaks to a wall, the reed wall of Atrahasis' hut, so that a man hears without being formally told. Demolish the house, build a boat, seal it tight, take seed of life aboard. The storm rages, the ark rises. The gods, starved of offerings, swarm the smoke of sacrifice when the waters fall. In the aftermath, Enlil burns to know who broke the embargo. EA answers not with defiance but with policy. If the problem was too many, then let there be limits, a fate for each house, infant deaths, dedicated priestesses, a measured span of years. Enlil accepts the remedy. Justice does not vanish. It learns restraint, and the world goes on. In everyday life, Enlil's presence is calendars and corridors. Nippur's priesthood tracked omens in the wind, tallied first fruits, and poured libations at city foundations, so walls would stand in his name. Foreign kings, Akkadian, the Threy, even later powers, knew that to rule Sumer without Nippur was to stand on sand. They restored Ekur, recited Enlil's hymns, and begged a verdict. Let kingship rest here for a cycle before it moves again. This is how Sumer understood history, not as a line but as a relay. Kingship passes between cities when Enlil wills it. The Sumerian king list reads like a weather report written in brick. Kingship descended at Eridu, then passed again. What looks like politics to us was, to them, Enlil's wind changing direction. Empires turn, and theology with them. When Babylon rises, the champion Marduk, Enki's son, the chief god of Babylon, takes the stage. In the Enuma Elish, he slays Tiamat, seizes the tablets of destiny from Kingu, and receives 50 names, absorbing portfolios once spread across the pantheon. In effect, Babylon's god becomes Enlil-like. Yet even as Marduk ascends, Nippur remains a pilgrimage. Rulers still seek the old house, because old legitimacy is a deep well. In ritual logic, Enlil's office can be borrowed, echoed, absorbed, but its pattern, law spoken as weather, kingship resting then moving, keeps shaping the plane. What do we do with a god like this? He is not tender like Inanna's evenings, nor intimate like Enki's rescue. He is the breath that holds the world in its sockets, and sometimes knocks it out. He speaks, and a year begins. He frowns, and a roof is torn away. He signs a flood, then accepts the policy that limits its repeat. For the Sumerians, that terrible, necessary voice had to exist. Between mudbrick and riverbank, they needed an axis, a command that could bind contracts, give harvest names, and break cycles when their own noise deafened them. They called that axis Enlil. If wisdom is water, we met it in Enki. If desire and risk are starlight, we met them in Inanna. Tonight we stood where the wind becomes law. If this descent and return stirred your curiosity, like this video, subscribe, and join me in the next chapter, where we ascend to Anu, the Sky Father of the Council, the highest seat of the Anunnaki, where kingship first descends and destinies are born. This has been Muse to sleep. Close your eyes and let the gods' heaven guard your dreams.